Hey guys.
So, David, what was your big motivation and inspiration in transitioning from traditional television into streaming media?
Well, it came around at a time when the scripted television business in Los Angeles had really moved to reality in a big way. At a time, if you recall, there was a period when reality really became very popular, and there were literally 2/3 less scripted series on television.
Like every night was
Right.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire
Not even
or
those,
The
but all the
Weakest Link and
shows. I
all
mean,
that.
the networks went into that really big,
Yeah.
and it coincided with the advancement in technology, and the interest in online media, and of course the advertisers who wanted to get in on it, and so it started to sort of appear as a real option, and I got asked to take over a website and launch it for the PR company. That was Channel Blast, which you mentioned, and it was right at that time that YouTube blew up. So I was literally one of the first TV executives that was there when this all began on YouTube.
So was YouTube like the canary in the coal mine that people saw that was such an immediate, phenomena that they're like, okay, well, there's definitely potential in building series with streaming shows. Because you're one of the first people that saw that this is really a new media that people have just been dabbling with.
Yeah, at the very beginning, it wasn't as much about series as it was about audience. That the audience was rushing towards a platform like YouTube as a way to sort of discover a new generation of stars, right?
Yeah.
That were posting their own videos. There was also a very successful series called Lonely Girl 15, which was a video blog series about a girl in her bedroom talking to the camera about what was going on in her life, with her parents, with her boyfriend, and it caught a wave of public awareness because people thought it was real. People thought, oh my God, this is the future of human communication. This is going to change, revolutionize the way people communicate with each other. It was on the front page of Time magazine that this new medium where people would broadcast directly to the entire world. And then they found out, of course, it was written by writers, and it was scripted, and they were actors. And it's the kind of thing you can only get away with once,
Right.
Because from that point forward, the BS detector was already activated.
Kind of like
but
what
at that
worked
time,
for the Blair Witch
right.
Project or something.
But it
yeah.
was a real phenomenon, and it got YouTube an enormous amount of attention. And it just sort of happened at a moment when there was so much attention focused on that. In the beginning, the technology was not as ideal as it's become.
And so I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
The technology wasn't as ideal, 10, 15 years ago. And so, broadband width was much slower, much smaller. Do you feel that dictated the shortened web series? Like, if we had the ability to instantly watch an hour-long episode like the new Star Trek series back then, do you feel that we would have still kind of started a little more compact with storytelling, like the 5-10 minute
I
series?
do. I think, look, the online media world has been up to now mostly snackable. It's been things that have been shared. Things have been, it's where a younger audience is consuming most of its content, and it tends to be much shorter. What you're seeing now is all the big media companies moving into the space and trying to make things that look more like television.
Yeah.
But the success of YouTube, which has become the most successful global entertainment platform literally in history, was driven by short-form content and snackable shows that people could easily share.
So stuff that you can watch while you're in line at Starbucks waiting for your, mochaccino or whatever.
Or other places.
Okay. So we have a very strong and very talented group of screenwriters, students at DePaul, undergraduate and MFA students. Can we see a show of hand, screenwriters? Oh my God, awesome, big crowd. So one of the things that new writers and aspiring writers are told, it used to be before you move out to LA or move out to New York, you want to have a writing sample of a spec of an existing show and your own original spec pilot. And now what new writers are hearing is yes, you definitely need those two things, and you should also have your own YouTube series that you can use to promote yourself. What do you think? Why is that the trend now? What motivates that?
I'm actually not sure that the answer is you have to have your own YouTube series. I think what's become very important is that you need to have something on video. That's the best way. The one thing about that YouTube, and it's not just YouTube, but the barrier of entry has become low. Anybody can make their own video.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a better way to tell your story. And so people expect you to have a video that you've made. It doesn't necessarily have to be a YouTube series, but it's a way. Think of it as a way to show your work, right? In previous times, you had to sort of find a way to get a script into the hands of an agent or a producer, or you had to find a way to get a DVD into their hands and hope they'd watch it.
Right.
The fact that you can send somebody a link they can click on their desk and see your work is really democratization of the access process. So I think to not take advantage of that is a real mistake. You need to have something that can show that you've made your own work, whether it's a YouTube series or a short. I do think that's become very important.
And is that also a pro and a con in which there's such an oversaturation of stuff that isn't so great, that the good quality material from new writers and TV creators can get lost in that, or does cream rise?
Well, I think at
always
an
rise?
early stage, what you really want is to be able to get noticed.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is you can send somebody a script, hope they read it, but if you send me a link in an email that I can just click on and watch a few minutes on my computer, the access point is much greater.
Well, let's talk about that. So, now with Netflix and Hulu, or even like with Louis C.K.'s show Horace and Pete, you might watch an episode that's an hour, 70 minutes or something. With streaming series, with a lot of independent series, sometimes, I've seen it, other professors here have seen it, students have seen it amongst their peers, that you've got people that are trying to cram either a half-hour sitcom format into 6 minutes, or an hour-long drama and force that format into something that's like 7 or 8. Is there at Canvas? Do you guys have a structured format for your programming?
Well, a lot of it depends on the buyers and what they're asking for. That seems to change quite frequently. There are less opportunities now to sell short form and more opportunities to sell full length. Vanity, which you saw as an example, we ran that on YouTube as 11-minute episodes. We specifically formatted it so that we ran 12 times 11 episodes, so that at the end of it, we would have 6 22-minute episodes. And that's what was distributed as a series.
So you guys shot like two-parters would be one episode? Wait, I'm sorry, I'm getting my math wrong.
Yeah. Two 11-minute episodes would make one 22-minute episode.
Okay.
And we didn't just cut and paste them.
Right.
They were written and formatted because we knew that's what we wanted to do when we were done. And we proved a model that really worked. And if you've noticed, Entertainment One came aboard and is now distributing that show internationally. And that started as a short-form YouTube series. So while there are no rules, the interest in longer-form content has definitely grown. There seem right now to be more opportunities for that than short-form, snackable content.
So would you recommend that when people are conceptualizing their shorter-form stuff, is it a good idea, a bad idea, irrelevant, whatever, if when they're conceptualizing, maybe they have the budget or the means to do like a 5 or 6 minute episode, but if it's something that can be automatically built into being eventually presented as a half-hour show, like when all the parts are put together. Is that a smart way to approach
Yeah,
it?
but
or?
it depends on what point you're asking. I mean, if you're talking about the entry point,
Yeah.
where you're going to make your own content and put it online, hoping to build an audience or to gain attention, the shorter the better. You know,
Okay.
it's once it gets into a professional realm where somebody's going to finance it, they tend to look at it more as an episodic series. But you know, right now, I think what you were speaking about is how do you get in,
Right.
And I think the way you get in is to have something that really displays your vision and then your work. And it doesn't really matter how long it is. But generally, if it's coming as an introduction, shorter is better.
Okay. So if we could elaborate on that a little bit, what do you feel from, really someone who's been on both sides of the table where you have presented material to sell to networks and studios, and you've been listening to pitches and developing with the creators. And I don't know, this is sort of a big open question, but what do you feel are really the key elements that someone needs to keep in mind when they're creating a streaming series?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, look, you need to get people's attention very quickly. I would say even if you have again, if we're talking about this kind of coming at an introductory phase,
Yeah.
You want to sort of get to the point quickly.
Okay.
Whatever the first episode is, lead off with the best you have, because you want to get people's interest right away. You don't know how long it's going to go. But there's a number of different models, Chris, where people will put their own shows online. Some people literally will make their own series,
Right.
and not think of it as, oh, I'm going to get discovered with this, but think I'm actually building a series online, and I'm making this into a business, and I'm going to try to build an audience, and I'm going to try to eventually sell this to somebody. It's all about where it starts in the process.
So with that approach, then, is it kind of the Wild West? You could choose whatever format you want if your goal is to just sort of be your own distributor?
Again, it depends on where you're distributing. If your
Right.
goal is to make your own series and put it on YouTube, I would say the odds are your first window, you're going to want to keep it short form.
Okay.
And make it easy for people to get in and easy for people to watch it.
Do you find certain necessities or strengths depending on the genre of when someone is selling something or someone's trying to accumulate a following to a series?
I think the most important thing is that it's good.
Yeah.
I think at that point I don't think you should focus as much on genre as much as making something that's great. That you really are passionate about and really going to put your resources behind.
Okay. On the flip side of the coin, then, what are some of the most common, biggest mistakes that you've seen in streaming series?
It's not so much in series, it's people thinking, the biggest mistake that comes to mind when you ask that question is people thinking, oh, I'm going to go get a brand to finance this because my show is about auto racing, and so I'm going to go get Ford, and they're going to want to put money into this, which is really not going to happen. You're not, as a first-time or even early-stage filmmaker, going to get Ford to finance your web series.
Okay.
And they're not going to pay to put their car in it either. Don't think about whether your show is right for a brand or not, because I think people tend to think, oh, my show is about young kids who work in a sandwich shop after school. I'm going to go get Subway. You're not going to get Subway. Focus on making a great show. Don't worry about how you're going to get it in front of a brand.
So you've got Denise Richards as the star of one of your series. How did that come about? Was Denise, was she initially interested in doing a streaming series, or was it something in which you guys had her in mind and built the show around? Or
I
how did
think
that
right
work?
now in Los Angeles and in New York, people view these kinds of opportunities as the way that you would view an indie film, right? It's a way to do something where you can do interesting work. You're not thinking about what the money is. You want for somebody like Denise, she'd like to be on a platform where she can be reintroduced to a new generation of fans, perhaps. But it's like, this is where interesting work is happening, and most artists want to go where the interesting work is happening. And so it's more like doing an indie film in their minds. They're going to do something cool that's different, doesn't look like something else that they're doing. You know, the internet is very democratic. You know, there's not a lot of barriers between you and your audience. That's one of the reasons why it's become so popular.
Well, I'm putting you on the spot, so you don't have to have an immediate answer for this. We could, you know, move on, and then if something pops into mind. But do you have any? And you don't have to use proper nouns, but
I don't know where we're going with this, Chris.
no. Do you have any horror stories of like a series or a pitch that someone brought to you or that you were developing, in which it seemed that everything was absolutely going for this show, and it just kind of unraveled, or something that completely bucked the odds, where if there's a show that comes to mind that really completely, you know, defied the odds of and ended up getting that Ford or Mac sponsorship or something.
Yeah, you know what? The one great thing about the entertainment industry is that you can never discount the fairy dust aspect of this, where something can just catch a wave and just, you know, it may not be something you ever thought would catch on. But if it gets an audience and it gets people interested and it gets people talking, it can become a huge success. There are no real conventional rules when it comes to this.
Yeah.
I've seen just as many shows that I thought were terrible turn out to be successful as shows that I thought would be successful turn out to be terrible. I mean, it's just
Can we talk about those a little bit?
No, we actually can't, Chris. I'm on tape here. I'm in public. This is streaming live on YouTube.
Fair enough. So how do we do that, David? How, you know, there are people in the audience today that either are embarking upon or have already created their own web series. What advice do you have for people in building that audience, getting it seen, getting it known?
Yeah, the audience piece is tough. You know, I mean, if you're living in Los Angeles or New York, the odds are pretty good that if you're in the industry and you're sort of circulating among other writers and producers and directors, you're going to meet people who are doing work on YouTube, right? And you tend to want to try to cast those people in your show because then their audience will follow the show. Right now, there's a lot of people competing for that talent, so you're going to need to have some kind of personal connection to somebody that's going to help you get that talent, right? You know, there are things you can do to try to generate an audience on your own, but generally, it's helpful to make sure that somebody connected with your show has a following in social media, or at least understands how to use social media, because that's the way you will get noticed.
So it's not just the quality of the series. You've also got to conceptualize.
Well, sure. If you're going to ask people to follow it,
how are they going to know
I think it does help if it's good.
Okay. Can you talk about some social media approaches that you've seen that you thought were really clever or that have been really effective with shows, either your shows or other shows that you like to let?
Well, maybe let's talk about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries.
Yeah.
Has anybody here heard of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries?
Fan? Yes, Lizzie Bennet
okay,
fan.
so that's
Lizzie Bennet fan over here.
So that's a show that I was involved with, and it hit the market at a time when it was not considered a likely success story. It was an experiment. We were saying this earlier. At that time, everything on the internet was dudes. And it was sort of thought of that way. It was like, oh
sort
yeah,
of Spike
it's just
TV
all a
on
bunch
the
of
internet.
dude
It was just
content
dude
and
shows.
dudes doing this and dudes doing that. And
it was all Johnny Knoxville stuff.
right, and the creators of this had this great idea. They said, what if there's got to be some way to target women or young women on YouTube, because it was perceived at the time that young women were not on YouTube, that there was nothing for them to watch. I know it's hard to believe, but it's actually true. There was nothing that was really being programmed for young women at that time.
Wait, so the experts were thinking that women weren't going on YouTube?
It wasn't experts. It was literally just, you know, there wasn't that much content being made at that time other than the occasional web series. It was still mostly all about YouTube channels.
Yeah.
Right? And the content that there was, as I said, was very male and very young and very sort of dude humor, right? Prank videos, things like that, right? And this came along, and it's sort of the fairy dust theory kicked in because it found an audience of young women who loved Jane Austen. That didn't hurt. And
David, can you talk a little bit about the history of how Lizzie Bennet
yeah,
came
sure.
to be?
For anybody who doesn't realize what it was an online adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Literally did the entire book in sequence, 100 episodes on YouTube.
My God.
Told the entire story from beginning to end, but all contemporary. Instead of about Elizabeth Bennet, it was about Lizzie Bennet and her. It was the same exact characters. What was fascinating about it is the creator, who is my partner in Canvas, built up a storytelling methodology where he would tell the story not just in video, but he would tell the story also in social media. So that you could follow the characters in social media and follow their actions off the page.
So those characters would be like leaving fictitious tweets or something?
It was a way to connect the characters on social media.
Yeah.
And there were more people following the characters than following the actors. Like, they weren't following the actors, they were following the account for Darcy. You know, that's what they were following. And it really became a phenomenon because it caught on. You were nodding your head. You obviously know what I'm, you know, it really sort of, it really sort of took off among young women and created this phenomenon. But it was not just because the video was so great. It was because of the way it was distributed in social media. It made it much more personal, much more interactive.
Yeah.
You know, we call it parallel storytelling, where, for instance, the character of Gigi Darcy, she doesn't come in until 3/4 of the way through the book. But you could follow Gigi Darcy on Twitter from the very, very beginning.
So you're you're following like
you're
parallel
following
stories.
the story world. You're following
Yeah.
the story world of Pride and Prejudice from the beginning on multiple platforms.
So you feel the benefit of the followers being able to interact with the show is something that's a definite asset in.
Typically, yes. I mean,
building it.
typically people refer to this kind of content as lean forward, as opposed to lean back, which is traditional. You know, the audience does interact with the content. They leave comments, they like it, they share it, they follow it aggressively. You build a community, and that's how you build an audience. It's not easy, not every show can do that, but that's why when you see shows being made by very popular YouTubers, what they're really doing is they are programming for their audience. And there's nothing in between them and their audience. That's the thing that's so great about online content. You know, in television or film, you know, there's so many layers between you and your idea and it actually finding an audience. Whereas on digital media, YouTube especially, nothing between you and the audience. That's why the interactivity is so important.
So with that, would you say the audience has a creative influence on the show?
They do, not in the way you would think. It's not so much like choose your own adventure.
Right.
You know, there are shows that have tried that, but generally it's more that, you know, you build a community and you build data from what the audience is responding to. And at a certain level, that data can then be sold, you know, as a way to help sell your show, right? If you sort of make 12 episodes of something and it gets a huge audience on YouTube, you can say, look, this web series has gotten 3 million views, and you can use that to try to sell it.
Okay.
You know, the popularity of something like that will definitely help you sell it to a platform.
And is it possible, I mean, are there even filters that allow you, you guys at Canvas, to have a closer, for lack of a better term, dissection of who your followers are, who your
yes,
watchers
the
are?
data and analytics are very, very important. The other interesting thing about Vanity is that Vanity was fully sponsored by Maybelline. Maybelline was the sole financier for that project.
So how did that process go? Did you pitch the concept to Maybelline, or did they come
Yes,
to you?
yes. In this instance, are any of you familiar with an online MCN network called Style Hall? It's a big channel on YouTube predominantly that programs to fashion and beauty, and they have many, many fashion and beauty influencers on their network, and they wanted to do something in scripted content, knowing that they had all these sponsors on their channel already. All the big beauty companies, all the big fashion companies were advertising on Style Hall.
Right.
So Style Hall wanted to do a scripted series, and they came to us and they said, hey, we want to create something. We think we can get one of our big brands into this. And so we came up with the idea for Vanity, and then they actually had brought Maybelline to the table, and so we were able to create this with Maybelline for their centennial campaign. The challenge for us was to have it not be perceived as branded entertainment, so that it could actually be a real show. Because when things are considered branded entertainment, it's very hard to distribute them. Like Amazon, iTunes, they won't take shows that look like commercials.
Are you talking about product placement?
Well, sometimes, but it's more that, there's things that look, I mean, you know what they are. If you look at a web series, you can tell if it's a commercial.
Yeah.
Right? You can tell if a video is a commercial or not. The audience's BS detector goes off immediately, right?
Well, and so many crappy reality shows are basically that. They're just...
I'll give you an example. There was a series that was done a couple years ago, a web series. They got all these big Hollywood talent to do it, behind the scenes as well as in front of the scenes, called The 4 to 9ers. And it was about, what kids do after school, right? And it was sponsored by, and they all worked in a Subway. And so Subway paid for the series. Now, that's fine for Subway, but when they went out and tried to sell it, there was no way to sell it. You can't sell that as entertainment. They're all working in Subway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like basically just a big commercial. So that you can't do. With Vanity, we actually felt there was too much evidence of the product. Like there were shots of them putting on makeup, and we thought, oh my God, we're going to need to cut all this stuff out when we take it off YouTube. But nobody noticed. One of the things that we're proudest of about that show is it was never perceived as branded entertainment, even though Maybelline sponsored it. But to answer your earlier question, we delivered an enormous amount of data to Maybelline about who was watching the series, who was interacting with the series. All that data was available to us. When you get to a place where you really have a web series that is a product, for lack of a better word, the data and the analytics that go along with it are a big part.
So you guys use like algorithms or something to find out?
Well, algorithms are different. That YouTube has an algorithm.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a different concept. In terms of a web series, it's really about being able to build and maintain an audience through loyalty, and that's where the interactivity comes in.
So that's the revenue destination that so many of us, where Canvas is now, where what you've created now is where so many of us, aspire to have our shows eventually get to. Can you maybe give some advice or suggestions on how new content creators, new writers can make their first revenue on their series?
The odds are, if it's your first or an early web series, it's not going to be about the revenue. You'll get incremental.
Yeah, but when is it, David?
Well, okay, but the answer is that over the past couple of years, one of the biggest changes that's happened to the digital media industry is that it's gone from being ad-supported to all being subscription. So now, almost every single one of these websites where you watch content, you have to pay a subscription. And that's why the budgets are getting bigger for this content. So as all that premium content goes behind paywalls, the advertisers can't really get to it in the same way. So then it just becomes a subscription model like television. I mean, if you look at a platform like Netflix, and Netflix followed the exact same route as the early days of cable, right? When HBO first launched, HBO was reruns and movies and sports and whatever, and then they finally started making original series. The first one was called Dream On, but then eventually it became The Sopranos and Sex and the City. But it was the same model that Netflix used, right? Netflix was essentially as an aggregator, right? They had all the movies, all the old movies are on there. But until they made House of Cards, then it was like, oh, now it's Netflix. That's the same exact thing that HBO did, how many years ago. So that subscription model has been a big part of the entertainment industry for many, many years. The fact that the streaming platforms are now doing the same thing is just an indication that it's not so, new media is not so new
Everything,
anymore.
yeah.
The more
What goes around
advertisers that come in, the more money that comes in, the more big media companies come in, right? It used to feel like all of these streaming platforms were sort of unique, idiosyncratic destinations that had their own DNA, but they've slowly been taken over by the big media companies. So really, if you look at the 5 biggest companies right now in digital media, they are Netflix, Amazon, Google, AT&T, and Verizon.
Yeah.
Those are the 5 biggest brands now online. So big media has, without a doubt, colonized and gentrified the neighborhood. You know,
Okay.
so think of it as a friend of mine said, think of it as Times Square, right? You know, at one point it was peep shows and hookers, and now it's Broadway. It's
Right.
very similar. You know, the internet has basically followed the same.
And
the
that's
same,
what's so
the same
important
path.
about net neutrality is that, you know, everyone kind of gets their fair swing at bat in,
Right.
in getting eyes on their shows. And getting eyes on their shows, can you recommend any competitions or contests or say workshops or venues like NAPTI or what have you, in which people can bring their series
Yes,
and shop
absolutely.
them around?
Absolutely. There is the New York TV Festival, which I recommend highly. There's IFC. I'm sorry, ITV, excuse me.
ITV.
ITV. These are both 2 big festivals that solicit submissions all year round and and select from those competitions aggressively, and people get discovered by getting accepted to that. Those are 2 very big ones that if you haven't heard of them, I would look those up. Anybody can submit. That's why, again, it's so important to have a video,
Yeah.
because you can't send a script to that. You have to send them a video of something you made.
Well, another thing I wanted to ask you is that now even my latest like cable television package, because there's so many different channels, I can just talk to my remote control and tell it, you know, what show I want to watch or what network. Do you feel that with streaming series, places like Netflix and Hulu and everything, that basically the traditional big networks from, you know, the 1950s on are really going to become an irrelevant thing, that we can that they're not going to so much have the stronghold on programming as independents can maybe rise a little bit more in prominence?
There always will be ad-supported programming. I mean,
Yeah.
the advertisers need it and the audience needs it. Not everybody wants to pay these big cable bills, right? Some people are just happy with their basic cable subscription, and that's fine. There will always be free television, but what you can see is that more and more of the premium content is becoming subscription, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really believe the networks are going to go out of business. I think they're going to adapt. They're going to evolve. I mean, basically every single network now has their own streaming service or some version of it, right? ABC has Disney. CBS just announced its own streaming platform. NBC. I mean, they're all in the game.
I mean, I'm saying this online. Just to watch that new Star Trek series, it's not a cheap endeavor. If you want to watch every episode of that, I think it's kind of a risky move on CBS's part.
But that's why I say they have to evolve.
Yeah.
Now, if you're CBS, how are you going to get people to come to your platform? You have to give them something splashy to get their attention. It's the same thing that Netflix did with House of Cards.
But it's like holding the Trekkies at gunpoint, you know?
I don't know. Laser point. Don't you mean
Phaser
laser
point. Phaser point. I'm sorry. I'm mixing my centuries. So let's take it one step further. You know, we're just talking about the democracy of viewership. For those that are watching online, we're streaming live, and the video series is coming from downtown Chicago. And Chicago is also a place where there are, you know, countless original streaming series that independent filmmakers and television creators are making. The city of Chicago hosted, I believe, last season, we had at least 10 different network television series shoot here, plus Netflix stuff. Do you feel, because the technology is so much less expensive, because the technology in delivering broadband and what have you is so much quicker, do you feel, maybe not next year or the year after, but do you feel eventually we'll be at a point in which artists can not just live in New York or LA, but you can pretty much live in any city eventually and become a professional streaming
I
creator.
think that's the case now.
You think so?
Yeah, many of the biggest YouTube stars don't live in New York or LA.
Where are they?
They're all across the country.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they maybe wind up moving to New York or LA the same way anybody does when they finally get their career to a place where Hollywood companies are interested in them. But most of them don't live in New York and LA. They come there after they achieve a certain level of success. That's why it's so democratic. You can make your own videos and post them online no matter where you live.
Yeah. And it's a combination of genres. It's not just reality type stuff, or it's sitcom, sci-fi. It's everything else that.
Yeah, it tends to be not the bigger budget things that people are making themselves. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're not going to do something that's got a lot of effects and a lot of airplane shots and car crashes and things. But so it tends to be personal stories. It's different. It's a different era of storytelling where anyone can be there, can be an auteur, and really have a voice and put it up in a place where it will get seen.
Well, David, what do you respond to when you have someone come in and pitch a series? What is it that you want to hear? Or, I mean, I'm making an assumption. Does your company, do you guys just develop everything in-house and bring in freelance writers, or how do you guys operate?
Mostly. Most of the development is internal. And when I say internal, it doesn't mean that we are creating everything ourselves, but we're going out to the people we want to work with. We're coming up with ideas based on what we know the people who want us to sell shows to them, what they're looking for.
Right.
We're in touch with the talent that we want to work with all the time. We actually don't take pitches.
Oh, okay.
What we want to do is see a video. That's what I'm saying. I don't. It's very difficult for me to make time for people to just come in and pitch shows. It's almost, and it's not enough to say yes to. You have to have something to show, unless it's somebody we know. Of course, it's coming in and saying, "Okay, here's the world that I want to create. Will you guys produce this?" But
Sure.
in terms of just taking pitches, we really don't do that. We want to see video. If somebody's pitching me a series, I expect them to. It's kind of what you expect. You expect that somebody's going to show you something.
Okay. So for people that have questions for David Tochterman, we're going to be doing a Q&A. If you want to migrate over to that microphone over there, we'll start Q&A in just a second. So have you guys ever?
Don't trip over yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has
It's going
Canvas?
to be really short Q&A.
No, it's a dark theater. I see bodies moving. Has Canvas ever looked at, say, something series that you've liked that was done sort of DIY, and said, okay, let's remake this, but with a budget, and find a bigger audience or anything?
Well,
like
sure.
that?
I mean, that's kind of like Socio has not been on the air yet. We made that ourselves.
Oh wow.
We had a partner, and we self-financed enough content to be able to create a demo reel. And there's a longer version of the demo as well, but the version that you saw, we sold the show to MTV. MTV bought Socio based on that sizzle reel.
Oh, that's great.
Now-
When is there a date that it's going to
Well,
be airing?
no, because what's happened now is MTV has announced recently they don't want to do scripted series anymore. So they gave it back, and now we sold it to a streaming platform called Fullscreen. Those of you who's heard of Fullscreen? A lot of people.
Yeah, a
that's
lot
good.
of people.
That's good.
Awesome.
So Fullscreen is now, these are the kind of companies that are now making this kind of shows. They won't make it for the same budget as MTV would make it for, but it doesn't matter. What
Yeah.
matters is that you're getting the story out in front of an audience, right? So we self-produce that.
Now, can you tell us about the person that? Well, you guys developed that in. Wait, you developed that in house?
Yeah, we
Okay,
had an
okay.
idea for a show about a young sociopath who's following
A bigger sociopath.
criminals on social media,
Wow.
and then she winds up getting this cop involved in the net, which is kind of what you saw a little bit in the demo. And then we self-produced the demo with a partner. spent, a pretty good amount of money on it. Mm-hmm. But it was an it was an investment in creating something that we thought would sell, and it has. It's sold twice. So hopefully this will be on full screen after the first of the year.
That's really exciting. We have a question in the back. Hi.
Hi, my name's Maddie. So, I've watched web series for a very long time now, and I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on web series as a form of alternative, like to show alternative stories, or like, I know that I find a lot more LGBT stories in web series than I ever do on TV. And so, like, I think that's part of a reason I gravitate towards web series. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on web series as like, just talk about what you think of web series as giving the stories to the viewers and, like, representation, I suppose, is where I'm getting at.
In terms of representation?
Representation.
Yeah, I mean, they are as valid as a way to get representation as anything else.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I
And that's
just,
kind of if you meet a young creator, if you meet somebody who's 22, 23, early 20s, mid 20s, you're expecting that they're on that they're involved in online media. It's kind of an expectation. So it's absolutely valid for representation.
And you're also talking about just representation in terms of LGBT characters.
yes.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot. I apologize. I couldn't hear everything you asked.
That's okay.
There is a lot of representation of those characters online.
I'm saying,
Many.
do you think it's easier than
Is it easier to get those characters
traditional
on streaming series?
I think so. Just because there are less boundaries online, and that audience tends to congregate online.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Tyler Oakley, but
Yeah.
people like Tyler, they're building huge communities around that, right?
Yeah.
And they're really treating it, and the internet embraces it. The internet is about a community. Everybody that works in this kind of content, it really is about the community, and the community gives back. And so it's a natural place to get that kind of support.
Of course.
Of course, you see TV trying to do it as well. It's sort of happening, right? Orange is the New Black and other types of shows that will now more aggressively feature that kind of casting. 2 years from now, it'll be even better. But yeah, it does tend to start online. There's just much more opportunity.
It just feels more authentic online. So
Yeah.
I was wondering what
Right.
your thoughts were. Thank you.
I mean, Gigi Gorgeous. I mean, some of the people that have really become successful are in that category. And they're embraced, really embraced.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm really sorry.
No, it's great. We have another question.
Yeah, hello, Daniel. Hey, I was just asking, as far as just getting your name known and I know Funny or Die doesn't pay, which is fine, because it's hard to get paid on the internet. But like, as far as like getting yourself introduced, you have this bit for a Funny or Die sketch or whatever. How do you think we should approach that?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Funny or Die, because that's a really good platform to be able to put your stuff on. Because if it's really funny, it will get noticed. If it's really good, you won't die.
The litmus test. Do we have another question? Hello.
Hello, hey. So, my name's Edwin Ruiz. I'm a producer here at DePaul. So, one quick thing. You mentioned getting analytics for being able to show you have a fan base. How do you go about that? How are you gathering that, and is it via emails?
Is that sort of a secret of the trade, or?
No, I mean it's readily available on YouTube. I mean, if you go to YouTube's homepage, it will literally direct you to how to get analytics for your videos. I mean, the YouTube Creator Playbook or the Creator Handbook, whatever they're calling it right now, is available online for free to anybody that wants to see it, and it's right on the homepage. That YouTube and Google, as I said, it is a community. They make all of this information available to the public. It's all there. They will literally direct you how to build that audience, how to track your analytics and track your data. I recommend if you really want to learn about how to do it, just go to YouTube and look for the Creator's Playbook or the Creator's Handbook.
Is there any value in trying to get them to a website and capture their email, or is that just kind of an additional step that's not necessary?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Oh,
can you repeat the question?
is trying to get them to your website to try to capture their
Get
email?
YouTube to your website?
Oh no, just like your viewers, like, hey, like, check out.
It does give some guidelines about attracting viewership, but it's much more about managing and tracking and cultivating viewership.
Thank you.
But it's if you're really interested in building opportunities on YouTube, I suggest you take advantage of all the free information that they give you, because it's big. I mean, they give you a lot. They make it really easy for you to be able to do it yourself.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Harry. I know you already talked about like stuff about like getting noticed through social media and using that kind of thing, but I know there's a lot of platforms to post like your pilot and stuff like that, like YouTube, Vimeo. I know there's a lot of local Chicago, like Open TV and stuff like that. What would, in your recommendation, what would be the best like platform to use? Because there's a lot of
For your own
platforms out there.
pilot?
Yeah, like if you have your own web series, like to post it on YouTube, or is Vimeo a better place?
I still think YouTube is the best place to put it.
Okay.
It's the most widely viewed platform in the history of the world. So I think YouTube is still the place you want to go. Yeah. You can do things on Vimeo and other platforms, and I think if you're starting out, I think YouTube is still the best bet.
Why not be on the most watched place?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's where people go. I mean, YouTube's got the biggest audience ever. I mean, there's way more people watching YouTube than watching network television or cable television. I mean, the numbers are staggering. How much content is consumed on YouTube?
So, David, as we wrap up, can you leave us with any advice for people that are about to embark on their first streaming series?
Just make it. Make it. Make the thing you're passionate about. Find a way. It's not that expensive. Get your friends. Everybody does each other favors. There was a stand-up comedian named Kevin Pollak.
Oh, sure.
He hosted one of these internet events. He said, "Doing your friend's web series is the new jury duty." But basically, the idea is, again, I'm joking about it, but it is about a community. You'll help your friends when they need you too. But get people together. Get out there and make it. The opportunity is sitting there waiting for you to get out there and grab it. Go out there and make it. Make something. Make the thing you're passionate about.
So let's give a hand to David Tochterman.